Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Perfect Family Storms, where the storms just keep rolling in with Dr. Cathy. Hi, I'm Dr. Cathy Reimers, a psychologist in New Jersey, and I've counseled children, teens, and adults and families for the past 25 years. During the years of my practice, I have observed and experienced unprecedented changes in the American family. All of these changes have caused an unraveling of our families and is creating constant conflict in our families, which I refer to as perfect family storms. The purpose of this show is to gain insight into your behavior, to find the truth behind your family dynamics, and the role that you play in perpetuating the family storm. It is only through facing our truth, as painful as it may be, that we will be able to survive the storm. Tonight's topic is pet cows and how they heal our lonely soul, Part 2. I've invited back a co-host that is very dear to my heart, and that's my sister, Diana Dorsch. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Cathy.
Hi. Again, thanks
How
for...
you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling in from Switzerland. This is the second of a 3-part series where we explore the amazing story of a pet cow named Baby and her calf, and how they saved Diana's life, but not without sacrifice. I have to warn our listeners that this is a very emotional episode, but one that is very inspiring. Diana, it's time to tell your story. Let's begin with a brief background for our listeners who did not have the opportunity to listen to Part 1. How did you get to know Baby and her family?
Well, the first time that I saw Baby was in a photograph that my fiancé had sent to me in December of 2009. And it was about a month-old little black and white calf standing in her first as snow. And the second time that I saw this little calf was when I had married and moved to Switzerland, to Kreuzlingen, Switzerland. And one day when I was working in the backyard, a mixed Holstein cow and her little calf came up to me behind the fence. And I right away noticed that this little calf was the same one in the photograph. I went and then looked at her very closely, and I noticed on her right front leg she had a perfectly formed little white heart. She was so adorable and so sweet. She had to be called Baby. And of course, her mother became Mama. It was just logical.
Diana, I have some pictures up on the Blog Talk Radio when people log in, and they'll be able to see a picture of Baby. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and most of those pictures were taken at her favorite spot at the picnic table, where she used to wait for us with the calf, where we fed them. So those are, very special pictures close to my heart.
Sure. And you gave them, you taught them some English commands?
Yes, I did. They obviously learned their names very quickly, and when they were on the larger pasture, and they would see me at the picnic table, I'd say, "Come, Mama, come," or "Come, Baby, come." And of course, when Baby had her calf of her own, then it was her first calf was Mini Baby. I'd say, "Come, Mini Baby," but she would learn from her mother. But there were certain commands that they did know, and when they knew the feeding was over, I'd say, "Bye bye," and "Bye bye, Baby," and she immediately knew that the feeding time was over and it was time to join the herd. So there were certain commands in English that they did learn.
Yeah. When did you find out that the cows weren't properly cared for? What happened?
Well, I think that was from the very first day of our first encounter. I noticed that they were very hungry. I noticed there was no water on their little pasture.
Oh my!
I noticed they were covered with manure.
Oh.
And that was from the first time that I actually saw them. And of course, in the beginning, he did not let them out very often.
And
but
he
as
being
time went on,
Diana, he being the farmer. That's who we're referring to, right? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not saying any names, but we're calling him the farmer.
He's the farmer. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I started to observe the farm more closely. And I actually walked over there and peeked into their stall and saw there was knee-high in manure. Mm-hmm. The water trough was dry. They didn't have much food to eat, and they had eaten the grass down their little pasture, and it was just miserable conditions. That's as far as the basic necessities of neglect. But there were also many other types of abuse that went on.
What was that?
Well, the one that we talked about in the last show is the first time I actually saw him hit a cow was hit Mama on the back with a heavy metal pail. He carried a stick with him always. He hit the cows getting them out of the barn. He hit them getting into the barn. Oh. He had cows tied up right flat to the barn wall. They could not, they couldn't sit. There were just so many abuses. I can't even go into all of them. We don't have time on the show.
Yeah, right.
But one thing that was for me, there's an experience I'm going to tell you about that I still have nightmares to today, and this horrific experience. The one thing I wanted to add before I start that story is that the first time that I was, found out about how deep this abuse goes to the production of meat and farm animals was the fact that it is legal to slaughter a cow right before it gives birth to a calf. And I think that really hit home when the mother of baby, Mama, on May 1st in 2011, she was ready to give birth to the second calf. She was only a day or two away, and he had her slaughtered with the calf inside.
Oh.
Now, I know many of your listeners are not aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's legal in the U.S.
This was going to be a tough episode.
It's going to be a very tough episode. But to get back to, I think that was one of the first experiences that really hit close to my heart as far as I consider to be animal abuse. But I want to tell your listeners about an experience that was so horrific. I still have nightmares about it. Mm-hmm. And this is about a case of two calves who were separated shortly after birth, a few weeks. I assumed that he killed their mothers. It was a male calf and a female calf. He put them in a very, very tiny little stall. He never let them out. He only fed them milk and water and dry hay. They were not allowed to eat any green grass. And I believe he was trying to make milk-fed veal, which is one thing I have to say is against the law here now in Switzerland. They're not allowed to do this to the young calves.
Diana, what they do? They just feed them milk and hay,
mm-hmm.
and don't let them get out of their stall.
Dry hay. That's it, and they're never allowed out of the stall. And this was a tiny stall. Very tiny. It only allowed them to walk in a circle and stand up and lay down. And obviously, as the calves grew, the space became very small. And their little legs grew crooked, and they had trouble, eating. Later on, I fed them carrots and apples. As I noticed the abuse with these two calves, he told me, which was ridiculous, that they had an allergy to grass, which is why they could never be let out. But that was absolutely absurd. And I contacted a veterinarian, and he said he had never heard of such a thing. It was absolutely ridiculous, which is what I thought.
To begin with,
that
yes.
he was pulling my leg.
Yeah.
So I used to go over in the middle of the night and, unbeknownst to the farmer, feed them carrots and apples.
Yeah.
I visited with them. I cut my own grass and fed it. And just to get down to the story at heart, in the middle of February 2012, I noticed that one night the little black bull, who was very affectionate, he thought I was his mother. He was just like a giant teddy bear. He would not come to me. He stayed in the back of the stall. He would not eat his carrots and apples or his grass. That's highly unusual. And the second night it was the same thing. Although the second night he was drooling from his mouth, and I knew something terribly was wrong with the calf.
Diana, was this
Diana?
Was this, there was these two calves, and you were feeding them in the stall, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you noticed, okay, go on, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, because they were never allowed out.
Yeah.
They were locked up continuously, month after month, day after day. And he would not come, so I kept coming back every hour on the hour, and I saw the symptoms were worsening. He was starting to walk in the circle, and I knew that was very bad. He was trying to tell me how sick he really was. So the next morning I went over to the farm very, very early, and I saw the farmer in the yard. He was wiping a knife that was covered with blood. I became very anxious, and I told him that, Bully was very ill, and he needed to call the vet. And then he said to me, "Why don't you go over and check on your little Bully?" Right? He said it very sarcastically.
And that was the one that was drooling that you were feeding.
Yes, the little black bull. There was a female there. I named her Girly, and his name was Bully. And I walked over, I peeked in the stall, and there was the little body of Bully, decapitated. His little body crumpled, laying in the manure, and his little mate, his little friend, little Girly, was laying next to him, covered with his blood. And I went back to the farmer, and he just turned around and walked away from me into the barn and left me there. And, it's very emotional.
Oh my gosh!
I can't believe how it would be to see a decapitated calf that you come to love, and see covered with blood, and his little mate laying there next to him, and it was very horrific. Well, I later found out that when there is a suspicion of mad cow disease, if they suspect that in any way, they need to cut off the head, and it needs to be sent to the animal hospital and analyzed. And I later found out that he had fed Bully contaminated hay. These calves were always very hungry, and Girly somehow instinctively did not touch this contaminated hay, so she did not contract this bacterial infection. But Bully was always hungry, as male calves have a big appetite, and he ate this contaminated hay, and he died. And again, I go back to the farmer because his silo was leaking, and the hay became wet.
Yeah. When it gets wet.
Wet. Because it can become contaminated. And he was always feeding them the worst hay. He gave them the bottom of the barrel, and I think that the other cows did not receive this hay, and the level of abuse with these two calves is just goes off the charts. So that's one incident of severe abuse.
Oh.
where the cow actually
What happened
lost.
to Girly? What happened to Girly?
Excuse me. Girly was then moved in with the larger herd, and he tried to incorporate Girly back into the herd because at that point there was nothing he could do. His little gig was over as far as trying to produce milk-fed veal because the vet had appeared on the farm. I have a little bit of a sore throat and cold starting here. I'm afraid flu season is hit pretty hard in our area.
Oh, yeah. We've already been hammered with that on the East Coast here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I apologize for my
that's all
voice
right.
here.
Oh.
But and as it came to be, because I had a close relationship with Girly, and I had a very close relationship with Baby, she looked at Baby as her little surrogate mother.
Oh.
In other words, wherever Baby was, Girly was with her on the field.
Yeah.
And they became like inseparable. So, it's a very heart-wrenching story.
Yeah. I was just going to talk a little bit about the, what kind of a person does this, but I didn't know whether you wanted to continue on with about what happened to Baby, or do you want me to go on with a little break?
You can. You're the expert, so you can analyze or have opinion. Probably.
We haven't heard the whole story, but I'm just, I've heard the whole story before, and just what you've shared with us. I'm just thinking about, what kind of a person does this? A person who's cut off from their emotions, except anger. But why? Well, we have to talk about the perfect family storm. And it's perfect because all these psychological factors come together to explain a person's behavior. Now, the farmer, as you recall, came from a very dysfunctional family. His dad had committed suicide, and he had, right after his dad committed suicide, he killed all the horses. That's the farmer, killed the horses. And with this, in killing the horses, why one has to think about, well, why did he kill these horses? Well, there was some thought that, or talk about this, that he felt like his father loved the horses better than he loved the farmer, his son. And this really just kept eating away at him. The other thing is that you have to understand that when suicide happens to a family, to most families, whether it's in Switzerland or the USA, but in particular, there was a great deal of shame. And Diana, you were sharing a little bit about, how the Swiss families are very to themselves, and having this sort of shame was something that was really very, very painful. And he was perhaps reacting to this shame. And I think that because his father, he felt like his father never loved him, I think that the farmer was very jealous of your relationship with the cows, because that pulled at the dynamic of his relationship, that the relationship the father had with the horses, instead of having a relationship with his son, the farmer. So that was something that really terribly disturbed him. And overall, I think he felt powerless. He was powerless to the suicidal death of his father. He was powerless to the fact that there was a lot of shame around this issue. That the farmer had 5 sons, and none of the sons took over the farm. And he was also, he had a very controlling and verbally abusive, the wife was very controlling and abusive, and he had no power, he was powerless to his wife. And probably a very important factor is that he was powerless to your efforts, Diana, to pursue the truth and blow the cover off of this. He knows the truth. He knew inside that this was a very wrong thing to do. But because he had so much anger and rage towards his father, that he took it out on the animals, and he also took it out on you. And the listeners will come to find out in all the ways that he did take it out on you. Diana, do you think you could continue with your story?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I know it's so hard.
Because we'd like to finish the story of baby.
Yeah.
Well, after that, the next hurdle that I had to overcome was on June 28th, when I discovered that the first calf of baby, mini baby, and there's a picture up on your site of baby kissing her little calf, and that's mini baby. That was her firstborn calf. And that morning when I came over, mini baby was missing, and he had slaughtered mini baby. And this is when I had found out from one of the children in the neighborhood, when she saw me crying, that she told me she knew where mini baby had been slaughtered. And she showed me the dirty shed that was bordering his property, and he illegally slaughtered mini baby. And this is how I figured that the cows were never being picked up, but they disappeared one by one. And I couldn't figure out how that was happening. And he was illegally slaughtering them in this shed that bordered his property. He ran them down the back pasture and ran them into the shed. He sedated them, and but he did not put them unconscious. And as far as I can understand, he decapitated them while they were still alive and conscious.
Oh, wow.
So
this is
all these
graphic.
things, I must say, here in Switzerland are illegal. You're not allowed to do any of that. And then serve the uninspected meat in their restaurant, which is what this is all about. It's all about money, saving money on every corner. And yeah, it's very abusive. And it was at that point that I confronted him, that I knew about the illegal slaughtering of these animals. He did not deny it. He made big eyes at me, and we had a huge fight. And after that, none of the cows, there were no more cows slaughtered between June 28th and October 12th. And on the morning of October 12th, of course, in the meantime, baby had given birth to a second calf. It was a little a bully. It was a beautiful little calf. He was about 4.5 months old by October 12th. And I went to the pasture looking for baby and bully, and called, and she did not come. She was nowhere to be found.
And that's the first time
girlie,
because that's the first. Yeah. I mean, you did this all the time. You fed baby
every single day, sometimes twice a day. if you think of, I've taken over 3,000 pictures and 50 hours of video, which I'm going through all the video right now, some of it to be posted on the PETA website here in Europe. I'm sure your listeners know what PETA, the organization PETA is.
Yeah.
And in order to get all that video, you have to spend a lot of time. I mean, many times after the feeding, I would spend an entire afternoon and video and actually just, stay with the animals, follow them in the pastures, sit with them, observe them. And they were totally comfortable. With other people, you could not get near the cows. They would shy away because don't forget, they were being totally abused. The farmer hit them all the time, and they were very weary of people. But they accepted me as part of their little group, and I could get very, very close. Most of the cows would come up to me and allow me to pet them, and it was just a wonderful experience. It's once in a lifetime experience.
Diana, I didn't realize how affectionate and how emotional cows are. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes.
With tears?
They're very, very affectionate with each other. They groom each other. They lick each other. They play with each other. They jump on each other's backs and they roll around in the grass. They're extremely affectionate.
And what about their emotions?
Like a dog. Yes, they have. It's very similar to having a dog.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they love to be petted. They love to be stroked. They love to be talked to. Sometimes I would sing to them on the field, and their little ears would go up, and they would then become very, calm. And I just couldn't get over how I paralleled. I've had dogs all my life, and I just had no idea, how affectionate and these animals can be. Yeah. In the barn, Baby used to lay her head on my lap, and I used to stroke her head and, curl her little tufts of hair on top of her head around my fingers, and I would put my little face on hers and nuzzle. I mean, Baby loved to kiss me. And the same thing with her mother, Mama. She would put her face directly on my cheek while I was feeding her, and she would not move. She was totally, nothing could make her move. She wanted to have her face pressed against mine. It's just unbelievable. I don't know if your listeners know this, but cows are one of the very few animals that cry tears. And when a mother lost her calf or a calf lost her mother, they would sit in the middle of the field all alone and they would cry. The tears would come down.
Oh my God!
And the other cows would come and encircle them and start licking the cow. They gave support in times of need to their other members of the herd because they are a herding animal. So they're all connected. When one left to visit, there was always a cow that was the leader. Mama was the leader until she was slaughtered. And then, another cow took her place and became the leader. And wherever this cow went, the others followed. Even if they were all comfortable and laying in the middle of the pasture and didn't want to move, as soon as that the leader got up and moved to another part of the pasture, every single one followed. And so it's very interesting.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how emotional and how human-like they are. Positive humans, let me say. Unlike the rage and anger.
A lot of,
they're like the good humans.
A lot of great qualities. Right?
Yes, yeah. So you were, I don't know, Diana, that our listeners know about that you were trying to save Baby's life by raising money right?
Yes. That was a 2-year campaign. From the time she was a calf, originally we wanted to save Mama and Baby. At this time, Baby was a very young calf. And I tried to launch a rescue effort in the summer of 2010. When I heard the farm was going to be shut down and all the cows were going to be slaughtered, I mean, I knew eventually, being that they were beef cattle, they'd be slaughtered anyway.
Right.
But now they were going to have a lesser amount of time to live because he had sold his land, and his land was going to be developed in condominiums.
Oh.
So that was going to speed up the process of the slaughtering.
Yeah.
So I wanted to launch an effort to save Mom and Baby. I contacted the newspaper to launch a rescue effort. The journalist interviewed the wife of the farmer, and she said if anything came in the newspaper, she would slaughter the cows the next day.
Oh.
I had the newspaper ad pulled because the journalist said he absolutely believed that she would do it. So we put the rescue campaign on hold. I continued to ask the farmer to buy the cows repeatedly over the next 6 to 7 months, and to no avail. He said the cows are not for sale. And he
so how much money was being offered to the farmer?
Well, it was the price of the cows that we offered, Bryant and myself, were above any
market price.
Twice the amount of money, yes, that he would have received for the meat. It was already double. And what happened was when Mama was slaughtered on May 2nd in 2011, that was the turning point for me. I said the only way to get this out in the open was to go to the newspaper. And I went to him and said, I'm going to bring this story out. I'm going to raise the money for the support of the animals. And I did that. I raised 6,000 francs, which is about $6,500.
Wow.
And that was for Baby and her newborn calf. And then I found a donor who donated 100,000 francs, which is like $120,000 for the care of the cows. And these were all Swiss people who actually came forward and donated this money.
Wow, how wonderful. Yeah.
And when I approached him with this, he said, absolutely not. The cows are not for sale.
What? $100,000? Over $100,000 for these cows, and he would not sell them?
No.
Yeah, this is it.
And the donor happened to be the widow of the man who founded an actual bank here in Switzerland. She's a very wealthy lady and has done a lot for animals.
Animal rights?
She's a big dog fan. For animal rights, and she herself has 12 dogs. She's 78 years old. She saved 12 animals from being put to sleep. And she herself had a huge farm that she turned into an animal shelter that she donated that was probably worth about $4 million that she donated as an animal shelter in Germany. Wow. And I brought this poor woman over to the farm, and my goodness, you would think that a 78-year-old woman that he would treat with more respect, but he sent her away in tears. He was so ugly toward her. He just didn't want to hear about it.
Wow.
But I continued with my rescue campaign until Baby was killed. I mean, writing letters and trying to find. I figured if he didn't want to sell the cows outright, why not donate them? I contacted a farm with a program for mentally retarded children. They had a therapy program with animals. Baby had no horns. Her calf also had no horns, and they were very, very gentle and would have been perfect for this therapy program for mentally retarded children.
Oh,
still,
yes. They have like a lot of equestrian types of therapy around here, because with all these horse farms around here, that and they do for kids who have emotional problems. They use horses, but I'm not familiar with any cow programs, so that's very fascinating.
Well, I wanted to. Baby was so gentle. Every time she saw children, she was the only cow, and her calf, because the calf followed, what the mother did. So anytime she saw children along the walkway, one pasture bordered walkway where the school children came in the morning, went to school, and came back at lunchtime. Children here come back at lunchtime to eat lunch, because that's their large meal of the day. And anytime she saw children coming by, she would run to them, and they petted her. Everybody knew Baby.
Oh.
And during the rescue campaign, the story of Baby was 11 times in the newspaper all over Eastern Switzerland.
I saw some. I've read some of your articles. You just did your best to try to get that story out there to save Baby and the calf. It just it's just so puzzling as to he was offered all this money, and yet he wouldn't accept it. It just tells you that this is a totally irrational person. This wound runs very, very deep, and it had nothing to do with money and everything to do with his anger and rage. And unfortunately, you were also the victim in it. He had it in for you, because this went very, very deep. And I really say that, like, the main thing was that this idea of powerless to having any control. That's how he felt, and you reminded him of how powerless he was, and so he was going to exert his power and, by golly, kill all the cows. Yeah,
and
I just wondered, with all this going on, your efforts and how hard this was, in losing these cows, and there's yet more to come with the story, I know, but I was just wondering, how did you cope with this?
Well, I had two fronts to cope with it. First of all, in August 5th, while I was feeding Baby, I had a very, very bad fall, and I broke my ankle in 3 places.
Oh.
And I have a plate in one side and screws in the other, and there's been a huge change in my life, because there will be many sports I won't be able to do, and it's something I'll have to live with the rest of my life. And for me, I have some blame too on the farmer, because if Baby hadn't been there, if he had sold Baby, I would have been there on that day, and that wouldn't have happened to me. I feel a lot of anger in that. I mean, but that's the risk that I took every day in being with the cows.
Yeah.
And
it's not like,
as a reminder.
Diana, it's like not easy. The terrain in Switzerland, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's very hilly, and it was wet that morning, and I slipped, and I had to be carried down the mountain. It was a huge thing, and I had a big operation, and for 3 months I couldn't walk, and I was actually feeding Baby from the wheelchair.
Oh, how dedicated.
On the walkway.
Oh, my God. Wow.
I fed them from the wheelchair. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And it's also that the cows knew that there was something wrong with me. I remember when I broke my ankle, all the cows came and made a circle around me. Of course, they were on the other side of the fence, but they all stood there, 45 cows, looking at me while they came and took me away. And Bryant said that after they carried me down the mountain because he gathered my things up, that it was only then that they left. They knew that something dreadful had happened to me. That's just to go to show the sensitivity of the animal.
Yes. So,
yeah,
you know,
it's amazing.
It is amazing. So in coping with this, you certainly had, you had your, family who was behind you. You had, it sounds like the support of, of the community and, the mayor's wife and, people who were also, and of course organizations like PETA to back you up and also emotionally support you. I mean, this is when people who don't have pets, it's hard to understand how deep this loss is like. I mean, it can feel like losing a child, and this family, this herd of cows became kind of like an extension. And I remember this one family I was working with in family therapy, and they were they had their dog who was just so ill, and they had to unfortunately put the dog to sleep, and they told me how the two children, the grandparent and the two parents, they all took the dog into to be supportive and stand around and be around and hug the dog one last time while she was on the table. And it was just an amazing experience that they shared with me, and how the tears were flowing, and it was just so difficult. And it's just I don't know, it's a very hard thing, and maybe that's something we should talk about in our next part 3 of our Cows Healing a Lonely Soul. We should talk about some tips about when you do lose a pet, what you can do. So
well, I know what helped me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say something I just read on this one website. It says all pets go to heaven, and and the reason that is because heaven is love, and pets always share that with us. I just think that's terrific.
That is terrific, and it's interesting you should say that, because when the little girl who was very attached to baby and the calf, and she's actually been accompanied me on this journey, because I'm her kind of proxy little auntie, and she saw me crying when baby was slaughtered, and she said to me, Diana, don't cry, because baby is in heaven.
Oh, yes.
And,
yes.
It's interesting that you should say that.
Yeah. Well, I think that.
Place.
Yeah. I know this has been a very, a very, very hard, topic. One that's dear to your heart, and I so much appreciate you sharing with our listeners about your journey, your story, and in the hope that it educates people to how important pets are and animal rights are. There's a lot of things that people can gain from this, and I'm hoping that our listeners will come back for part 4 to learn more about animal bereavement and also the positive things that did come out of this, and also what people what can people do to support animal rights? How can they get involved, and what are some good websites? So that would be very, very important for our listeners to hear. So anyway, Diana, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing this story, and we'll be back next week to finish part 3. Okay?
And thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
It's very important. As you know, when you're dealing with grief, it certainly helps to talk about it.
Yeah.
And talking about the story of baby is my therapy. So I appreciate the listeners being there and you giving me that opportunity.
Thank you.
To talk about the story of baby.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye, sis.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.